and we're joined by Mayor David Holt. Sir, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. My lifestyle hasn't changed much, even though we've entered into a new phase. And the workload hasn't lessened significantly, but a little bit. It's not quite so 24/7 COVID-19 anymore, but it's still a lot. But we're hanging in there, and I feel good about everything we've done so far. And we're now talking about moving into a new phase of our reopening.
Let's pull on that thread a little bit. What are you considering new phase, and what does that mean?
Well, we're following the White House gating criteria in terms of our timing, and in Oklahoma City, we look at that data every day, and it's symptoms, it's cases, it's hospitals. It's pretty good criteria. Our local public health officials have really liked the criteria that Dr. Fauci and his task force came out with several weeks ago. So that kind of tells you when you look at these things. The substance of what you do in these phases is also a product of those White House guidelines, also what they're doing at the state. We don't operate in a vacuum. I'm only the mayor of less than half the people who live in my metro. So when the state acts in these regards, we do have to consider that. And so we have largely aligned with their openings. What we have done in Oklahoma City is place certain conditions on some of the high risk activities to make sure that they are executed in the safest way possible. To your question of what this next phase holds, phase two is really a much more modest transition than phase one was from where we had been previously. I kind of joked that phase two is just phase one with bars, but it's not a very dramatic change. A lot of the same restrictions on the high risk activities like hair salons and restaurant dining rooms are still in place. But it certainly, it symbolizes, it reflects that we're moving forward and that the data is still good. Relatively good, it's still a dangerous virus and it's still killing people and sickening people far worse than a normal virus. But relative to other cities and states and relative to the White House gating criteria, we're moving in a positive direction.
How has the city had to adapt to this? What sort of changes have you seen and made over the past, 8 dozen weeks?
Oh, well, it's incalculable. We, especially in those first few weeks, our lifestyles were changing so rapidly that I think we were all, suffering emotionally from it. It was a very dramatic change in the way we lived, everything from the way we shopped to the way we worked to the way we entertained ourselves. And much of that is still in place. We're not sheltering in place anymore as a legal matter, but many people still are in a practical matter. My lifestyle hasn't dramatically changed. I still largely work from home. And I think you're going to see a lot of people still continue their teleworking for many months to come. We still have a virus and there's no vaccine and no treatment. You're seeing us move into some activities that had been completely foreclosed upon for about 6 weeks, like dining in restaurants and shopping in some stores and getting a haircut. I obviously haven't yet done that yet, but people are, but they're doing it in a new way. And so they're adapting by embracing some sanitation and distancing protocols to make sure that those activities are safer than they were before.
What do you think residents of Oklahoma City can expect moving forward? What does Oklahoma City look like this summer, for example?
Well, still different, again, by the time June and July rolls around, it's very likely that everything will be open, but I think you'll still see organizations. Sorry. You can edit this, right?
Yep. And I'm the same way. I've got notifications flying left and right. That's just kind of the way things are these days, right? We're on a constant Zoom. We're on a constant group text. Maybe we're hostage on a group text.
So anyways, I think as the summer arrives, June and July, you'll see everything essentially open, but I don't think you'll see a lot of organizations having their meetings that are larger. I think you'll see travel diminished. I think that's still an open question, about whether people feel safe on planes. It's just going to be different, but a lot of things, are returning. Youth sports comes back in phase two. So some of the customs we're used to of standing on a sideline and watching our kids play soccer, those types of things will return. Yet at the same time, as soon as they walk off the field, we're going to be slathering them in Lysol wipes, So, I mean, it's, there will be elements of this new normal in everything we do. What I think you'll be seeing behind the scenes that we're going to be having to do at the government level, we have multiple roles here. And for a while, people got used to our role of closing things, and as that changes, now our role becomes creating an environment where you feel safe in the absence of a vaccine or a proven treatment. And so we have to work on building the infrastructure for testing and tracing so that you don't feel like every time you walk into a restaurant, you're walking into a cesspool of COVID-19.
I think that's an interesting conversation. And recently, I've chatted with various executives of corporations or owners of restaurants, and they're asking me, as a consumer, what would make you feel safe in this environment? Is it the number of chairs at a table? Is it the glass coming from over there, or should the glass already be on the table? Which would you feel better about? It is a consideration, but it's almost at an individual level because we all have different comfort levels, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's one aspect of it. You're describing the sanitizing and distancing protocols that a restaurant may engage in, and some of those they may engage in of their own volition, and some of them might be placed upon them by government. But there's a bigger picture infrastructure that needs to be in place that would maybe make people feel safer regardless of all those sanitizing and distancing protocols. And that's if you had really mass testing and you had an army of tracers out there. So you knew that everybody in this restaurant has probably been tested in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Now, understanding, I mean, we all get it. Like, you can be tested on Tuesday and catch it on Wednesday. So, I mean, it's not like the test takes you 2 or 3 weeks, but still, there's a sense that everybody in this restaurant has probably relatively recently been a part of a test. And we also know secondarily that if they did test positive, that there was this army of people who went out and found all of their contacts and talked to those people and got them tested and got them quarantined if they test positive. And with all of this happening, you have a higher sense of comfort that the people in this restaurant don't have COVID-19, that somehow they would have been caught either through the testing or through the tracing. Right now, I don't know that you have a high sense of that. You probably wouldn't.
But then that comes to privacy issues and maybe the scarlet letter issue of, hey, this person has it, or, it's interesting the different perspectives you could have on that as well. You're right. It would provide a more of a comfort level.
Well, it's still a free country. I mean, our tracers are never going to be able to force people to answer questions or submit to a test. And that's why you hear some messaging out of public health officials around the country. Hey, if you get a call or an email or a text, please reply, like, please be a part of the solution, contribute to this conversation. And I don't know, you're raising the issue of the scarlet letter is an interesting question, because some people have theorized that our future will be one where those who have had it will be actually the uber citizens who are proud to have had it because now they are theoretically immune. And so you may want people to know, oh, I've had it already. I'm good. Like, you don't have to worry about me. That's almost become a science fiction world that we've been talking about and theorizing about over the next 2 years. But that's an issue. Yeah. Do you want to have it or not have it?
What do you think, on that train of thought, what do you think we've learned over the past couple of months? Because it still seems like there's a lot we don't know, or we are still learning.
Well, in many ways, we have relied upon tried and true techniques that literally were the same things we did in 1600. I mean, like, just shut down the theaters, get away from everybody, go hide. I mean, those types of social distancing strategies are the same as they have been for hundreds of years. They are the only real mitigation tool you have when something like this hits and you don't have a vaccine or a treatment. So I think we just relearned things that we as a people have known for a long time. When it comes to the virus, we probably haven't learned enough as fast as people would like. We still don't, even though I just referenced this idea that you have immunity once you've had it, that's actually not proven. We don't have scientists out there telling us that's a virtual fact. They believe and hope it is true because that's how viruses normally behave. But it's still so early in the research on COVID-19, they can't state it as an absolute scientifically proven fact. There's a lot to learn, a lot of work to do. But at the end of the day, many of the ways that you transmit COVID-19 are things that we have known as a people for many, many centuries. And that's why, we do some of the things we've done. But we also have learned, I think, if we didn't already know, which we probably could have, that people can't do that stuff and maintain that level of intensity for 2 years, and so we're trying to find that middle path now. And it's as much about human behavior as it has anything to do with the science of COVID-19. It's about trying to figure out, what are the right buttons to push to get people to respect their own safety and the safety of those they love, and moving forward in a long period of time, and trying to find how we navigate this path. And there's no right answers. And certainly ideologues at either ends of the spectrum don't have them. I think we're all just trying to find the right path that we can all live with and that is respectful of life, but also recognizes just certain realities. And one of those realities is that people can't shelter in place for 2 years, but maybe they can wear masks and maybe they can keep their distance for 2 years.
All right, so final question for you, just based off of that, looking forward, what are you optimistic about?
Well, I'm optimistic that from an economic perspective and hopefully from a virus perspective, the worst is behind us. I have to believe from an economic perspective, the worst is behind us, but that I also recognize that it's a long climb out of the hole. So I'm optimistic about that from a macro perspective. I'm optimistic that we have in fact had our peak locally in Oklahoma City as it pertains to the virus, but that's something we have to work at every day. And I'm constantly reminding people we can have a peak in 2 weeks if you want to. We can all work together to make that happen, but if we work responsibly, we will avoid that. In Oklahoma City, from a more micro perspective, I'm optimistic about the fact that we entered this pandemic with literally the lowest unemployment in the country. We found that out a couple of weeks ago. It was bittersweet because we knew that a lot had happened in between the gathering of that data and the release of that data. But we had literally the #1 lowest unemployment in the country. Just a few months ago, 6 months ago, we passed $1 billion, basically stimulus package for our community in the form of MAPS 4. And we still have that to look forward to ahead of us. Things are still happening. And as we talk, we just had this announcement of a potential deal with Costco for 1,000 jobs, averaging almost $60,000 a year. It's one of the biggest jobs announcements we've ever had here in Oklahoma City. And it's just, a reminder that we had a lot going for us on March 15th, and those fundamentals are still in place. And so I'm very bullish on Oklahoma City's future. And I think we'll get to a place where we feel like things, that the future is bright, probably faster than people think. There's still going to be some significant gaps when you look at the travel industry, the visitor industry, big events. That's probably going to take, a much, much longer time to recover. But I think a lot of aspects of our economy may be back to some level of normalcy with adaptation here in the summer and fall.
Always enjoy the conversations with Oklahoma City Mayor David Holt. Sir, thank you for your time. One final question for you, just out of curiosity, how many Zoom meetings a day it seems like it'd be a ton.
It's a lot. It's funny. I'd never even heard of Zoom until this pandemic arrived. Now it's sometimes it's just one to the next, and then sometimes there's like a WebEx thrown in there, and that throws me for a curve because I'm not as familiar with that technology. But there can be days where it's 5 or 6 different things like this. But still, I don't have to drive anywhere. It's pretty convenient all in all, and a fairly efficient use of my time. So.
I was getting 3 weeks to the gallon on their gas these days.
Totally.
Right, Mayor, again, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate you.